Happy Tuesday, you Mavericks. I am excited because today we're going to talk a little bit about storytelling and what does that really mean about our legacy, our family, the next generation, maybe even the next generation. So, our guest today is an amazing attorney who's got some unique insights as to how we can navigate these challenging conversation on estate planning. And so, with that, I'm going to turn it over to the ever wonderful Catherine Wells.
Yes, feeling so wonderful today. I might have to have a root canal.
Oh,
Yuck. Oh, I know. I
Now you're
know.
just getting crazy.
I know. It's like, whoa. Um, so that's such a great way to start off a podcast. So here we are. This is reality. This is life. And I'm so super excited to have Michelle Adams here. I was introduced to Michelle Adams recently, and I am so thrilled. She has a book called Family Strong. We're going to talk about that. She's an estate planner. She has a business called Colorado Family Legacy. And um, we really talk about things. I want to set the stage here because it's really important. When we're thinking about our life, one of the most important things we can do is plan our life and plan through the end. And I've always said I'm super grateful to my dad for having planned everything out. It made our lives so much easier when he and mom did pass. And I saw many times that it put strain even on us as a tight-knit group of siblings, even when things were planned out. So I know that things can go awry. And I recently watched the documentary Being Mortal. And so I'm going to attribute this quote to that documentary, but I'm not entirely sure that that's where it came from. It matters to people how their story comes to an end. And what Michelle is doing is helping people create what that looks like. And it really does matter how we choose our stories to play out. So with that, Michelle, tell our audience a little bit about who you are, what you do, and why you do it.
Yes. Well, thank you first, Kathy and Francis, for having me on. This is a topic that, let's say 20 years ago, I would not have thought at all I would be in this field. I think we all have that experience of we have our life mapped out in one way, and then, slowly we hit these different milestones and our life takes on a different direction. So when I was going to law school, my focus was purely on criminal law. I was going to be a criminal defense attorney, and that was end of story, right? And then life kind of meandered and changed. I worked for a financial services company, and this was in the, I hate to date myself, but early to mid 90s. And it was completely off course of what my education was. And while I was there, they said, I was in law school and working at this company at the same time. And they said, well, Michelle's in law school. Clearly, she knows something about estate planning, right? So we're going to have her lead our estate planning courses for new hires. Okay.
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah. So that was, putting my pinky toe in there, the first dip. And this was back in New York. Long story short, moved to Colorado literally the year after graduating from law school. And then just, I would say in the last few years, decided it was time to get back to doing something that I loved, which was primarily working with families and doing so on a more positive end, where I was helping families be proactive about that legacy that you mentioned that they want to leave behind. So I'm proud to say, celebrating 10 years. This is the 10th year of my law firm. Yes, thank you. And I always say it is a privilege to walk with my clients, because I know that a lot of them have come reluctantly, kicking, dragging, pulling, screaming. When you mentioned the root canal at the top of the show, I'm like, yeah, sometimes people think I'd rather do a root canal than meet with an attorney to talk about my potential demise. I get it. But at the same time, just like we're able to laugh and smile, that's what I like to pull out of my clients, that sense of, yes, while the topic may not be pleasant, it's also so very necessary. And let's take some of that awkwardness out of it. And so it's been my pleasure to do it. And I think my main reason why, or one of my reasons why, I think back to both sets of my grandparents, but my paternal grandparents in particular. And I was extremely close to them. My grandfather died when I was 12 years old, and my grandmother died. They were married for 54 years at that point. And then when my grandmother passed away, it was in the 90s. And she just left so much in terms of the vitality and the vibrance of her stories and the way that she lived her life, that it's an honor to serve people, all people, but in particular those who really want to be intentional about what it is that they are leaving to the next generation. And as Frances talked about, the next and the next beyond that.
That's so fantastic. And I really like how you framed it with, it's not the path you started on. You started on a whole different path. And I think that's what happens is, and this is why it's particularly important in the concept of senior care. We don't know where the senior care journey is going to take us. We have no idea. And every senior care journey is completely different than the one your neighbor has next door. So it's one of those things where we can plan. Let's plan the things that we know won't change, and let's plan for the things that will change, and have some discussion about it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, we don't want to shy away from the topic. We want to plan to the extent that we can, but also be flexible and open enough to recognize that sometimes we may need to make some adjustments, and there could be some hiccups along the way. And while we're in our right mind and have the capacity, now is the time to do it. So many stories, but I think about clients who wait until the very last minute. And I've been in the room with someone literally hours before they were passing away, just to make sure that they got everything in place the way their intentions were.
Well, I think one thing that I've always said, and Kathy, is we have to look at aging and planning for aging just like we plan for our retirement. And I think too often we have this disconnect that we feel like, oh, I'll get to that, or I'll get to that. But literally, if you think about it, by the time, 15, 16, 17, even 18 years old, you're thinking about that retirement planning, the 401k, the Roth, the IRA, whatever other acronyms you want to throw out there. But when it comes to legacy or generational planning, it's almost like, why would I do that? I'm not going to die tomorrow, right? Or I'm 20 years old. Why do I need to worry about that? Or 25. And all of a sudden you're 55 and you go, wait, what just happened the last 30 years? And I think we have to be comfortable acknowledging that retirement and legacy planning go hand in hand.
Yes.
Right? Because if your financials are taken care of on both sides of these, right, whether it be like a long-term care policy or how you're going to pass wealth down, what do you have to worry about?
That's it. You have to have that coordinated plan to make sure that left hand, right hand are in sync with one another. And it's interesting too when you mention younger people, because all of us have the fallacy that dying is for the old. Define old any way you want, but it's not me, right? So you have 20-year-olds who think that, you have 50-year-olds who think that. I've worked with some 80-year-olds who, they're still like, we got plenty of time. But what I remind people is that estate planning is not just about your death. It is also about your life and what should happen if, God forbid, you have that tragic car accident or some other life altering tragedy or injury happens to you. You need to have a plan in place to say, this is who you want to take charge over not only your finances, but over your healthcare decisions. And if you have a business, you need someone to step in to take control over that as well. So it is truly about planning out, and we can't predict everything, but looking at your life as this broad kind of canvas, and to the extent that we can, starting to really be thoughtful about, if this happens, then I want this outcome. And it's always a constant process. It's not a one and done thing. It's something we always have to come back and revisit.
And I don't know if you can answer this question, but let me ask it, because this is a situation a friend of mine, excuse me, is going through actually right this moment. If you haven't done that, So that doesn't exist. And you're in a situation where you're one of the adult children, one of the two adult children. And now mom, who's the only living parent, has developed dementia and decided to give all of everything to one heir and nothing to the other heir. But she would never have done that if she was thinking properly. What do you do? So these are some of the fallout things of if you haven't done this, these are some of the things that can happen. We never want to see our parents behaving that way, right? But they're not doing it intentionally.
So this happens far more. That situation is not unique at all, whether it's a sibling scenario like the one that you pointed out, or if it's a parent who gets remarried and now that new spouse is trying to work his or her way into that family dynamic, and it creates some rifts and some tears. And unfortunately, in that situation, and the whole Britney Spears, and again, let me just say this. Again, people think, oh, this only applies to someone who's 80, 90 years old. She's what, late 30s, and this is a conservatorship where now this is a situation where somebody's making decisions about her life. And so I bring this up to say that you want to make sure that while you're in your right mind, that you have laid out, that you have, when you have capacity, that you have laid out the plan. In the absence of that, now someone could petition the court to say, listen, I want to apply for conservatorship or guardianship over my parent or over whomever the adult is. But that's a high hurdle that one has to climb. Now, if there's a diagnosis, and there's a doctor who can certify, yes, this is the situation, the court is more amenable to it. Oftentimes, though, we're working with clients or individuals who are kind of in that in-between stage. So some days are good, some days not so good. One sibling wants to have this diagnosis and have mom or dad, they want guardianship. The other one's like, no, they're completely fine. And there's a lot of autonomy that the courts want to provide to adults to say, unless you can prove that this person is completely incapable of not handling their assets or taking care of themselves, it's a hurdle that they have to jump over for the court to appoint that, at least here in Colorado, for guardianship or conservatorship.
Can we talk a little bit about the concern that's always brought up is the financial, I mean, do you have to be wealthy? Do you have to have a lot of money to make this type of planning happen? Because, I mean, I think that's the first thought that comes to mind is, well, who really needs this? If I'm not wealthy, do I really need it?
Yes, thank you. Everyone, and it sounds crazy when I say this, but if you're over the age of 18, you need a plan. Now, is it going to be the full on, I need a trust, I need all these other, the ABCs, the alphabet soup of different types of trust? Probably not. But do you need a plan? Yes, because what can happen is a parent who has been so used to making medical decisions for their child up until this time, once that child turns 18, in the eyes of the law, they are an adult. And so they need to make sure that they have in place who would make medical decisions for them in the event of their disability or incapacity. And again, you may say, Michelle, they're just 18. How many 18-year-olds do you know who may have been in an accident, who may have made a poor choice and that left them hospitalized for a period of time? So you want to make sure that that young person does have a plan in place. In terms of the money, though, so most 18-year-olds may not have a whole lot of wealth. But let's look at someone who has a house or a life insurance policy or something along those lines. You absolutely want to make sure that you have a plan in place. And I tell people there's either the proactive planning where you're in charge, or there's the default where the state has a plan already laid out for you. So you die, you get injured, there's no plan in place. The state has default provisions that say this is the person that will receive the money, or this is the person who will make the decisions. So when I talk about estate planning, I really want to take that myth off the table, that it's not about wealth. It's not necessarily about how much money you have, but really looking at, do you have minor children? If so, you need a plan, because you need to know who is going to be the guardian of that child if you should either be hospitalized or upon your death. You want to make sure that the state is not making that decision for you. So you don't need Bill Gates money, but definitely
Can I ask one other question that I get asked a lot? Well, isn't my spouse automatically my decision maker if something happens? I think that is also a misnomer that I like to clear the air on.
Thank you for that as well. And it is a misnomer. Exactly. Because, there's an assumption that people say, well, I'm married, or if you're in a partner situation, that presents its own, avalanche of issues that can come about, because a parent may want to step in and the partner's like, but I'm this person's partner, and now a court has to make the decision as to who should make the decision on behalf of that individual. And so just because you're the person's spouse does not automatically give you the ability to make decisions, because who knows, maybe you're in the process of going through a separation. Do you really want that person to make the decisions on your behalf? I don't think I would.
It's a good question, and I wonder how LGBTQ issues fall into that too.
That is, the same scenario, because you have sometimes people who are very accepting of the relationship and they would completely honor that person's partner in making decisions. But then you have those family dynamics where there might be some tension, and perhaps somebody else says, no, you're not making the decision. I don't even recognize this relationship. I'm going to make the decision. And now we're button heads. And anytime that happens, you're going to court and you're paying attorneys a lot of money out of the person's estate in order to resolve this conflict.
Yeah, we had an attorney that anytime that anybody goes to lawsuits, no matter the level, small or large, the only ones that actually make money are the attorneys. So they basically were like, so figure out a way to not go take it to a lawsuit, because we don't mind being involved and you'll pay us great.
Yeah.
But in the end, you guys, neither side's really going to win when you see the attorney fees.
There it is. And full disclosure, I don't do contested matters because I just don't like dealing with the conflict. But that said, I always encourage people to resolve it, because it's not just about paying the attorney's fees. Yes, that hurts your pockets, but it's also about preserving the family relationship. And when you think about how many, again, countless number of stories where I see children in particular acting poorly, and the parents would be rolling over in their grave if they knew that child A and child B were arguing to the extent that they were.
Yeah, and those are things that can be addressed beforehand if there's a little discussion around it, right? I have a situation with a brother who has schizophrenia, lives with schizophrenia, and my parents always said from the very beginning, hey, this is how we're setting up our will, because he's going to need more support. We can't just do this, slice it by 4, right? If they hadn't had that conversation with us, that could have caused a lot of issues. It was absolutely the right thing to do. We all agreed. And it was still something that could have caused issues potentially that was just completely averted because of the conversations and the planning.
And that is so critically important because, well, 2 things to that. One, I'm so glad your parents had that conversation with you, that this was not going to be a quarter. We're going to do something differently. Yeah, to do the math. We're going to do something different. And the other piece to that is that sometimes there's an assumption that one of the siblings is going to take care of the individual who may need care. And that's a really not so great assumption for parents to make. And so the conversations need to be had that say, here's what we're hoping, but let's talk honestly about what that would look like, so that no one is feeling the pressure of now having to take care of someone. And then there's that resentment and all the other ill feelings that go along with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It makes a lot of sense. Let's kind of dive into this book a little bit more. I kind of really, I'd like to kind of dive, because I think it's a unique way to, I'd say, frame this discussion.
Yes. So I started this book, and, shameless, I always have a copy close by.
You should.
Yes. But it's Family Strong, 7 Gifts for a Lasting Legacy. And, it goes back to that question, Francis posed about, well, isn't estate planning, legacy planning just really all about the wealthy? And again, it's reiterating the fact that when we think about this topic, it goes deeper than money. It's more than just assets, more than just the physical things. It's about those, what I call those spiritual, those emotional, even those intellectual gifts that we want to pass down to the next generation. So what I did was divided the book into 7 gifts, and each gift was something that just resonated with me. Somebody else may have another 7 gifts that they think are just as worthy, but mine starts off with the gift of your story, which is, who are you? What's your family background? What is that story that perhaps from generation to generation you've heard? Has someone taken the time to capture it? I find a lot of wealth in not only talking to people, but I also point out in the book, even looking at obituaries. And again, it sounds crazy. I hold on to obituaries because there are tiny nuggets of information that people will find out about the loved one that they may not have known during that person's life. Of course, the goal is to hear it while they're living, but if that's no longer an option, you might still find some nuggets within, those family mementos, including obituaries. So the gift of your story, the gift of connection, which is all about coming together and really deepening and strengthening those family bonds. I was mentioning to Kathy at the top of the show that I just came back from visiting my parents in Florida, and it was my family and my sister's family. There were 12 of us under one roof. We rented a house, and it was just so amazing and it actually was a combination of the 2 gifts. My mom was sharing some stories about things that happened earlier in her life, and to see her grandchildren's eyes light up like, oh, that happened to you? Wow. We're seeing her in a whole nother light, not as the senior, but as the person who in her 30s, went places and did things and were exposed to different things. So the gift of your story, the gift of wellness, which is further divided into 5 different areas, and that would be emotional wellness, physical wellness, environmental wellness, spiritual wellness, and then social wellness. And that last part is all about the community and the village. And, I share the story that I'm a New Yorker, a native New Yorker, moved to Colorado over 20 years ago, had the village in New York, but now had to reestablish a village for me and my family here in Colorado. And that's so important because the family sometimes is not just our blood, but it's also those people that we've adapted or grafted into our lives. The 4th gift is the gift of planning, or the gift of preparation. And that's really where I talk a little bit more about the estate planning component, but it also goes into, Frances, you had mentioned retirement planning. That was my very first job right out of college, retiring people who were about 3 times my age. And it really helped set the bar for me. And hopefully, this is helping others to think about, yes, we need to start getting these things in order. The next gift is the gift of compassion, and that really goes to philanthropy, yes, but not philanthropy in the sense of, I have billions of dollars that I want to give away. If you have that, great. But if it's only $100, that's fine too. Or if it's no money, but you can give of your time, even better. And what an important lesson that teaches the next generation, that it's not just all about you, but it's also about how you can give back into the community. Then I talk about the gift of curiosity, and it's all about learning. And I just love, being able to expose myself, the kids, our families to new learning opportunities, whether that's travel, whether it's culture, whether it's food, it encompasses so many different things. And then the last gift is the gift of possibilities. And here's the one thing that I really want to hone in on is that, no matter what stage of life you are, whether you're a new parent, whether you're a grandparent, maybe you're a great grandparent, it is never too late to start seeding these 7 gifts into your children. I mean, it's something that any of us can do at any time. And I just think it's important that we continue that cycle of making sure that we're telling our stories, we're reminding people of the possibilities and everything in between.
So fantastic. And when you were talking about compassion, the gift of compassion, I was thinking, and like you said, everyone has the different things that resonate. I would add to that one, the gift of compassion both ways, the compassion from the adult children or the spouse, because we mostly are dealing in senior care here. And having compassion for where the older adult is in their life, in their emotional state, and meeting them where they are. And it's really, really hard to do sometimes if you haven't like sat back and thought, oh, well, that's not how they would normally operate. There's, let me get into their space, let me get into their world and understand what's going on, and just having that kind of compassion.
Thank you for that, because, as you were saying that, it reminded me of one of my very best friends. She was going through this with her father, and towards, as he was making those transitions, and it was still maybe about 6 to 9 months out. But not of course, his behavior started to change, and it was challenging. And she's an only child, and she did not have the same perhaps support that maybe others had, and she was starting to take it personally. But then she did have that switch that said he would never talk to me like this if his mind was where it would normally be. This was the apple of his eye. And so in that process, it really helped her to develop compassion for the season that he was going through. And I'm sure even the frustration of not being able to be the person you once were, and now being this other individual, all equally valid, but just different.
Yeah. And we know more about it today. So there's options. There's ways to get that kind of support. So, Michelle, we always ask our guests, who in your life do you consider to be a maverick?
I always look back to, and maybe it's just, the daughter in me, but it's my mom. She's just an incredible woman. And, as I mentioned, we were in Florida. We were actually celebrating her birthday. I won't say how old because but let's just say it's 80 plus.
Good
she
for her.
Wears it. Yes, she wears it proudly. But she has always been an inspiration for me throughout my life. I mean, she and my dad are amazing, but there's something about that mother-daughter dynamic. And whenever I think about who I am, I know in large part it was attributed to who she created and raised me to be. And, she is an amazing individual, was the first of many within her family as well as in her profession. And I just admire the woman that she is and how she's living her life boldly and unapologetically. So whatever aging is supposed to look like, she has defied all of those definitions.
That's awesome. Love it. She's defining her own definition, which we all should do.
That's right. That's right. I'll have to say this because she has the parents have a great network of neighbors, and we call them the teenagers, because half the time they're doing things and we're like, where are they? What are they doing? It's like, oh, we were hanging out, we were doing this. I'm like, never mind.
I love it.
Yeah,
that's right. That's awesome. We don't always need to know, do we?
That's life, but that's life, though. I mean, again, just because you're getting older doesn't mean that we got to bubble wrap you. They still have to live life, and I think there comes that tipping point for some families, especially, is that they all of a sudden, well, mom's 75 or 8, we got a bubble wrap her, can't let anything happen to her.
Yeah,
and I think that's when things do happen, when we stop encouraging and empowering people to live the life that they want to live. And that matters as we age, is taking control of that. And I think going back to what we were talking here today, part of the way you take control of that is building out your legacy, is letting through the different, avenues that are there, so that people know exactly how you want it to be. And then revisiting that every 5 years or so, or 10 years, how often your vision of that life changes.
That's right. That's right. And that's the beauty of life, right? We're never locked into a path. And any moment we can just make a choice to do something different. So I love that.
Mm-hmm. So what action? We're big into action, right? Change doesn't occur without action. And, action or inaction is still an action. So what would you encourage our listeners to do?
Well, the first thing, I have to put on my attorney hat again, is if you don't have a plan in place, please, please, please be diligent about starting to get those things in order. And, sometimes people need baby steps, right? So I say, at least initially, just kind of inventory all the assets that you have, because, especially this other this generation, my parents' generation, they have stuff all over the place. And so it's now like, okay, tell me more about this account here, tell me more about that account there, and really trying to harness it all so that we have a better understanding. The second thing I would say is if you have a plan in place already, just review it, because most likely I just had a call from someone and it was their last plan was, I think, in '08. Doesn't sound terrible, but the laws have changed since '08. So we want to make sure that if you do have something that's been in place for a period of time, more than 5 years, please have that reviewed, because circumstances change and dynamics change, and you want to make sure that you're up to speed with that. And then the third thing I just want to encourage your viewers to know is that it's never too late. Whether it's the estate planning piece. My oldest client, when we first started working together, was 98 years old. Bless her heart. She passed away, but she was an amazing individual. So it's never too late for the estate planning piece of it, but it's also never too late to really help deepen and strengthen and preserve those family bonds. So whether it's a parent that's still living, if it's a child that you have, if it's a sibling, whatever that relationship is, look to find ways to really help to deepen that, to strengthen it, because you just never know how that's going to impact that individual. Everyone loves to share what their stories are and to know that someone cares about them.
So well
Excellent.
said.
Yeah. And let me say that we all have an opportunity to control our own narrative, how our own story of our life, and this is part of that. So it's not an expense. So many people look at it as it's so expensive. It's not an expense, it's an investment in your legacy and the way that you want to leave things for your heirs, whoever your heirs may be. So super important. And I will say that I promise you it's not as bad as a root canal. I can promise you that. I promise. If you go and see Michelle or any other estate planning attorney and it's worse than a root canal, call me.
Yeah.
Let's talk.
Kathy, I will say that the best thing I get from my clients is that, wow, you made this process so much more easier than I envisioned it to be. And so, yeah, it's not as bad as a root canal. Nowhere near as bad as a root canal.
But I'll leave with this too and say it's peace of mind. You can't really put something on that, because I think that aspect matters more to people than we realize. Is these extra stressors or these things going on a lot of times are because we're pushing things off, right? We're being now I want to say lazy, but we're being I'm with the word here.
Head in the sand.
Head in the sand. We're procrastinating.
We're kind of just procrastinating. We're just kind of procrastinating. I think when you tackle some of these take some action to clear these elements out, you're going to find yourself freeing up more mentally and being relaxed and not always having that constant maybe tick in the back of your head going, should I do that? I should, but we'll talk about it next month.
And the worst feeling is when you're on an airplane and then there's turbulence and you're thinking, oh, I should have done that.
Oh my God. There's a business right there. There's a business there. You could be on every flight and oh, that's funny.
Set up a little corner office in every flight that says estate planning here.
That's right.
Oh, I'm thinking the airlines wouldn't enjoy that. Michelle, if people want to reach out to you and ask questions, how can they get a hold of you?
Sure. Best way is to go to my website, two websites, ColoradoFamilyLegacy.com. That's for the law business. If they're interested in purchasing a copy of the book, they can go there or go directly to FamilyLegacyStrong.com and place an order. And if they want it autographed or signed, just let me know and I will do that as well.
Cool. That's awesome. Awesome.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Michelle. We appreciate you and all that you do for people.
Thank you both and everything that you all are doing to create more Mavericks in this industry. Love it.
Thank you. Well, everybody have a wonderful, happy Tuesday. And before we go, though, we want to share a little bit about our event. I don't want to call it a conference because it's going to be a little different, but it's an amazing collaboration event called Collaboration in Aging. Our website is right there below, but we have 3 amazing organizations that are coming together to really shake up how we look at these silos and breaking down the aging services industry. And the reason I say aging services is because we have a lot of different elements coming into play here. we have hospitalists, we have doctor's office, we have placement agents, assisted living, skilled nursing, estate planning attorneys. We really have the gamut of aging. And in order for us to really form and share our aging story, we need to come together. And so we really encourage everybody to join us in person in Denver, September 16th and 17th. Get your tickets now because, Kathy, when does our early bird pricing end?
August 15th, and ticket prices go up by $200. So
Yes.
make sure you get it before August 15th. And this is not only going to be fun, so it'll be a nice little respite for those of you in the industry who've really been, through the ringer the last 18 months, but also hugely educational, continuing education credits available. Teepa Snow, Louis Gravance from Disney, really, really impactful opportunities to create change in an industry where we know change is needed.
Yes. So we look forward to seeing everybody there. Again, collaborationinaging.com is our website. And thank you all. Have a wonderful Tuesday, and we will see everybody next week.